Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. Live in the studio with me today, I have Allan Daisley. Allan is the Director of Entrepreneurship and Sustainability at Memphis Bioworks Foundation in Memphis, Tennessee. Previously, Allan served as a technology consultant, a director of product management, and a worldwide product marketing manager. He was also the co-founder in 2 different startups, and he holds a BS in computer engineering from Georgia Tech and an MBA from Duke University. Allan, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in. I mentioned just before we got started, I know you're very, very busy right now, and we're going to talk more about that, but I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Well, so for our listeners who've never heard of Bioworks, who maybe don't live in Memphis, can you tell us a little bit about what Bioworks is?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So Memphis Bioworks is a local nonprofit, and we're focused on economic development. So our mission when we were founded was economic development through bioscience, and really it was the mission to help be the rising tide that lifts all boats here in Memphis, so helping people to find jobs, become more employed, and to help them achieve what they wanted to in life. And part of that is entrepreneurship, and part of that is job training, part of that is education. And so we do a lot of those things to help increase the levels of prosperity here in Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. So within Bioworks, you have a program. It's called 0 to 510, and I know you head up this program. So how does the program 0 to 510, how does that fit into Bioworks and what Bioworks is doing?
Sure. So 0 to 510, we've been working on going on 4 years now, and it's one of our entrepreneurship programs. So back in 2011, the state gave out grants to help promote the acceleration of high-growth businesses across the state of Tennessee, and we were a recipient of one of those grants, and we just decided that we would try and find something that we could really be good at, and given that Memphis is a hotbed for medical device research and development, we thought that if it's one thing that we could really do a good job of growing new businesses in, it would be entrepreneurship in the medical device area. So we decided to kick that off in 2012.
No, that's great. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of our listeners outside Memphis probably were not aware that Memphis is a big hub for orthopedics research. I think it's Memphis, and maybe there's somewhere in Indiana. And
yeah, Wausau, Indiana is probably a little bit more activity than us, but we're right up there, and people don't know that. So
yeah.
We've got Smith & Nephew, Medtronic, there's Wright Medical, and then Microport, which bought a division of Wright Medical not too long ago. So we're actually one of the big hubs for all things orthopedic.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And even just within the medical industry, like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is here in Memphis, and there are quite a few other sort of research
Campbell Clinic
things.
is here as well. They wrote the book on orthopedics, and so we've got medical center, and regional one is sort of the big level 1 trauma center. It's probably the only one in 4 hours of here. So
oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
There's a lot going on in Memphis that people don't know about.
I know, that's so great. And that's what's really nice too today, kind of talking about this, especially for people. I actually work with a ton of clients who are interested to get into the medical industry, and also who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. So I think this will be really helpful for them as well. So 0 to 510 is an accelerator program.
Right.
For people who've never heard of an accelerator, what is it? What does it mean?
Yeah, so an accelerator is one of these, it's sort of not even a new concept anymore, but in the mid-2000s, you saw a lot of accelerators happening, especially in high tech, so Techstars, Y Combinator. But the whole idea of an accelerator is that you take an abbreviated time frame, and usually that's 3 months, 90 days, and you bring in new startups, you give them curriculum to follow. You also give them mentors, which is a huge component of helping them to be more successful. The goal there would be that if you could learn something from somebody who's been there, done that, then that helps you not make the same mistakes they did. And then the final component is funding. So there's usually a bit of seed funding that goes in, and depending on the accelerator, that could be anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000, just depending on the accelerator. But that's a key bit, so that as you learn, as you make connections, as you work with these mentors, you actually have some money to be able to go implement the things that you're supposed to implement. And so that combination, then it usually they take you through this 3-month period, and it usually culminates in something called a demo day, where you pitch in front of investors and you look for that next round of funding to help you either get to the marketplace or get to your next few milestones. So the accelerator then becomes sort of a way to date, if you will. So you get to know the investors get to know you, and you decide if you want to carry that relationship on beyond the accelerator.
That's great. So when it comes to the seed money that's given to someone who enters an accelerator, what do they have to give up in exchange to get that money? Is it a percentage of their business, or what does sort of the exchange typically look like?
Yes. So yes, nothing is free. That's a good point. So yeah, the exchange is usually a bit of equity in the company. That's the most standard thing. So in exchange for this $25,000 I'm investing in you, I'll take 4%, 5%, whatever it is of your company, and I've now become a shareholder in your company. So that's typically the way it works.
Okay. Yeah. So I know you're in the middle of your 90 days right now. When did it start? Like, when did your accelerator start? What was the first day?
Yeah, we started on May 11th.
Okay, and when is your demo day?
So our demo day is on August the 13th.
Okay.
So, yep.
It's coming up soon.
It is far too soon. At the beginning, it seems like 90 days is a long time, but man, it just flies.
Yeah, so is demo day open to the public if anybody who's listening is interested?
It is. It's absolutely open to the public. So come on down. We'll be at the Sheraton, downtown Memphis. And this year, demo day is going to be in conjunction with Startco, another one of the accelerators in town. So we'll have not only our medical device companies, but there'll be some high-tech companies and other types of companies as well. And it'll be a really good show of what Memphis is creating in terms of entrepreneurs.
Oh, that's so great. So given that you're in the middle of your 90 days, how many companies are involved?
So this year we have 4 companies in our cohort. It's a pretty small cohort, pretty intimate. But our goal is to really give as much attention as possible to these teams and maximize their probability for success.
Yeah. So what kinds of companies are those for?
Yeah, we have companies in all kinds of things. So we've got one company that is doing a breakaway IV. So essentially, if you're in the hospital, you'll have to get IV fluids. So they'll stick a needle in you and they'll tape it down, and then you'll have an IV that comes from a bag. It's a liquid.
Yeah.
A lot of times patients will actually pull those out. They wake up from surgery, or they're they're not sure where they are and they don't know what's going on, and they'll pull at it, and it's a mess when they pull it out. So this one actually is kind of cool because you put this device in between the line and the site, and if you pull it, you can pull it out, but you won't pull the needles and all of that out of your arm, and because it can be a bloody mess, literally, if you do that. So that's one. We've also got one that's, we call this is one a baby wearable. It's actually almost like a Fitbit that you put on the baby, but it's bigger. It straps across the chest, and it can take a whole range of vitals. And the idea behind that one is that a lot of times parents will if something's wrong with the baby, they'll rush to the ER. That's the first thing they do is they go to the ER, and that's very expensive, and it's 3:00 in the morning. And this way, you can actually do. You can take the vitals and send them to a physician, and that way you can do, basically like a telemedicine visit with a doctor, so whether you need to go to the ER or not.
With your baby, so that's so interesting, from home.
Yes, it's very cool stuff. So that one's another cool one that's in the cohort. And then we also have a product that is aimed at diabetes population. So right now, to look at diabetes, to check your sugar levels, you have to prick yourself and do some reading. And our entrepreneurs who are doing this one, they actually have a device that you put in the toilet. So it's not blood that it checks, but it's urine.
Okay.
And it's very functional, and it's one of these things where you can do it as part of your daily routine instead of pricking yourself or things like that. So it makes life easier, and it also gets a good reading, because usually when blood glucose levels are high, then they go into the urine, and you're really only concerned about them when they're high. So urine is actually a perfectly fine way to do it.
That's interesting.
So, yeah. So the fourth business in the cohort this is kind of a complicated one. It's called a guided tissue regeneration membrane.
Whoa.
Say that 3 times fast. So what it does is whenever you have a wound, and they're specifically focusing on the dental market right now. So if you have a loss of a tooth, and from their research, I'm learning so much. Something like 50% of the people in the country suffer from some kind of a tooth loss event, even in partial at some point in your life. And so you have these when the tooth comes out, there's a hole. That hole needs to be packed, and then the gum needs to heal over it, and they use these membranes to fill in the space between whatever they pack in the bone socket and the gum, so that they can both heal separately and more effectively. And so these membranes exist, but they've come up with a new one with a special ingredient in it. It's medical grade Manuka honey.
Wow, honey like bees?
Yeah, exactly. So apparently this has been used, from back in the days of the Egyptians, because honey has these antibacterial qualities, and it helps wounds heal better. And so what they've done is they've made this membrane, and they've infused this honey into it, so that now it can carry these these better healing and antibacterial properties to help speed up the healing of wounds. And so that they're starting in the dental industry and then looking at just wound healing beyond there. It's pretty cool. The technology is actually out of University of Memphis here, so it's a homegrown thing. So it's a really nice story for homegrown team of he's the leader's a PhD at the University of Memphis, and so it's actually a cool story from Memphis and entrepreneurship.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So for all the teams, are there PhDs that are involved in each team? Are they like entrepreneurs? Like what kind of person, gets involved?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. These guys come from all walks of life. Often there is somebody who brings the science, and then usually that person, whether it's a PhD or a master's or even a bachelor's, we've got a lot of biomedical engineers who come in, and then they usually pair up with someone else who helps drive things forward on the business side.
Okay. Yeah. That is really interesting. Now, do they have to stop working during the 90 days? Or, are they moving to Memphis from other places?
Yes. So we actually, typically half of our class is from outside of Memphis. So we have a lot of people who come to Memphis, which is also really cool. 0 to 510 was the first of these kind of medical device accelerators that really kind of focused on this 510K process, which is just a fast path through the FDA. And
so 510 describes like a document that you have to get approved, or
yes, so it is, essentially you do have to submit these papers.
Okay.
It's a 510K application, and so 510K is a sort of a faster path through the FDA. Typically, if you come up with a medical device and you take it through the regular process of FDA, it'll take you, 5 to 10 years. It'll take you, $50-60 million or more to get it to market. And that just puts it way out of reach for your average entrepreneur. And so one of the things that the FDA has done is they've made a faster path, which is called the 510K route. And what that means is that if you create a device that has a similar function to something else that's already in the market. So for example, you've got a pen, I think I can make a better pen. It's for the same set of uses. Then if you've already done the work and spent all the money to get yours into the market, market. The 510K is a more of a relative path. So I don't have to prove absolutely A, B, and C. I just have to prove that I'm as good as you, the one that they've already approved.
Okay.
So as safe, as effective for the same indications, and then they will actually clear you to go to market with that.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So we've chosen to take that route because, with the money that we give, we figure if that's a faster, cheaper route to market, and it's a much better opportunity for entrepreneurs. And indeed, most of the devices that get to market these days go through that route.
Yeah. What are a couple of the cities? Do you remember offhand cities people have come from, other places to come for this program?
People come from all over. I mean, we've had, so I'll tell you, we've had applications from about all of the continents except Antarctica. We've had,
Wow.
Europe, Asia, all over. And then several of the U.S. states. In terms of people who've actually come, we've had, the Southeast has been well represented, the Carolinas, up to Baltimore, New York area. We've had folks come down from D.C. and from nearby as well in Arkansas and Mississippi. So it runs the gamut. It's from all over.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned you've been doing, this is the fourth year, is that right?
This is the fourth year, yeah.
What are some of the companies that have gone through it before? Like what kind of ideas have come out in the past? Just a couple.
Sure, we've had ideas that have included implanted devices. There's one for stress urinary incontinence. We've had a company come through that does eco-friendly foam patient positioners for when you go into surgery to support your neck and your extremities. We've got one that's doing a sterilization tray. They're actually in the market now and they're selling. So it's been everything from implants to tools to things that clean tools. It's just all kinds of different things that have come through the program.
And so the one you mentioned with the sterilization, that's Restore, is that right?
That's Restore Medical, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
and so our listeners, if they're interested, could go and check out the Restore website to learn a little bit more about sort of, I guess, what happens to companies after they go through your program.
Yeah, absolutely. So Restore is at restore-med.com, and they came through in 2012. And medical devices, unfortunately, you don't get them into the market in 2 or 3 months. It takes a little while. So so now they've hit their stride, and they are selling to customers not only here in Memphis but around the country. And they had come up from Atlanta, so that was one of the cities that we had participants from, and they've decided to stay in Memphis and make it their home, and they have their office here, and they're good tax-paying citizens, and so it's a really nice story for how this model can work.
No, it's awesome. I know they've actually moved their families here, so I mean, a lot of people have committed to this idea. Well, so what are some of the characteristics that you've seen for the startups that are successful? Like, what is it that those founders have that's a little different than other founders?
Well, first of all, you have to be just a little bit crazy. I mean, talking about the Restore guys, they left their families in Atlanta and came to try this and see if it would work. And so, they're adventurous. They are definitely less risk averse than the average person. You have to be comfortable with jumping off with no support wires and really jumping into it. They, without exception, are very driven. They're people who want to achieve. They're tenacious. And they don't take no for an answer. They if there's a problem, they are very driven to solve it. I've also noticed that they're just curious and very observant people. They look at the world around them differently from the rest of the population. Everything they see is an opportunity to fix. If it's not working right, if it looks like it's broken, if if it's annoying them, they don't get mad and do nothing. They figure out a solution to it, and that's their brains are always going. So they're a truly outstanding bunch of people.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that someone told me years ago, and I always kind of wonder other people's perspectives on this, is someone said to me once that good entrepreneurs, one characteristic is that they don't sleep very much. Do you find that to be true? Or?
I would second that. I mean, they probably should sleep more. But yeah, even when they go to bed, their brains are always ticking and they're thinking of the next idea or how to solve the problem that came up that day. So yeah, it's sleep is definitely a secondary thing.
I know even for me in my own business, I think I sometimes have dreams about, my business or interview skills or resumes or whatever, and it's pretty strange.
You must be one of them.
Right. Well, so on the opposite side, we just talked about some of the really good things. What are some of the common sort of issues or struggles that you see some businesses having as they're starting up?
Oh man, there are so many. One thing about this entrepreneurship journey is that there's always something that's going to go wrong. We always say if things went really smoothly, you didn't learn anything. One of the things I see, and probably the most important thing, is people. We always tell entrepreneurs, as you get your business together, it's absolutely critical that you find the right people. Right people not only from a skills perspective, but from a culture and fit perspective. What do you need them to do, and then how do you work together with them? You'll find that, if you can tolerate somebody for 4 hours, it's a whole different story when you have to work with them for 14 hours a day. So, make sure you like them. It seems kind of trivial, but it really helps when you get in the trenches. So the people, not having the right people and at the right time, having people who are disruptive or people that you can't work very well with, or people that don't pull their weight. I mean, you absolutely, if you're in a company with 10,000 people, there's always the odd one who doesn't pull their weight. But, when you start a company with 2 or 3 people, or even 5 or 10, everybody has got to be pulling their weight. So people is the biggest thing. The biggest thing they'll tell you is funding. It's finance. It's we can't get funded. We can't find the money to do what we need to do, and that is a big problem as well. So it's a challenge to find, whether it's angel or VC or friends and family. Funding is always one of the difficult obstacles. And then maybe I'll mention one more, and that's just the ability to manage resources. You have limited resources, principally money and time, and they're very much related, because the longer it takes you to do something, the more money you spend. Even if you're not doing anything, you still have to eat, you still have to pay rent, you still have to put gas in your car. There's all these things, and so you have to have a sense of urgency about it and make things happen. So those are probably the big things that I've seen that have been issues with startups.
No, that totally makes sense. Recently I interviewed for one of my podcasts a really impressive entrepreneur. Her name is Brooks Bell. She lives in North Carolina. Her husband is also an entrepreneur. And one of the things that she has talked to me about on a number of occasions is that she recommends that entrepreneurs start as early as possible. She and her husband both started businesses while they were still in college. I think they went to Duke, actually.
Good school.
Yeah. But she recommends that you start the business before you have a lot of commitments, because the money does become an issue when you have children or you buy a house.
Yeah.
It just becomes harder and harder and harder. And so a lot of people that I speak with say, gosh, I really want to start a business, but I'm waiting until later, and I'm waiting until later. And I think sometimes the longer that you wait, the less likely you really are to be able to make that plunge.
It is hardly ever the perfect time to start a business or get married or have a kid.
Right.
So at some point you just have to jump off and say, look, I'm going to do it.
Absolutely. So I work with a lot of clients and talk to a lot of people in general who really struggle to decide, should I get a corporate job or should I start a business? And they really have a tough time sort of with this debate in their mind.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give for someone who was trying to figure that out?
Yeah, so if you're really trying to figure out, do I stay in corporate or do I jump off? I'd say, there are a lot of ways that you can sort of stick your toe in the water and sort of see what's happening. And, one of them is, and we encourage this actually, is if you've got deep skills in some area, come be a mentor, because there's several entrepreneurs here in our community who, they're starting up a business and, they've got great ideas and great drive, but they don't have all the industry expertise. And even if they have some good knowledge, they haven't actually, maybe worked with a big company before or figured all of these things out. So, one way you could do it is lend your expertise to be a mentor, and that way you get a nice inside view into what's happening in these entrepreneurial ventures. That mentorship could turn into maybe you being someone who's an advisor to them or on their board of advisors in some respects, and that gets you even closer inside the circle so you can see how things are done and how they run and get a feel for whether or not you can do it yourself. There are also startup seminars that you can take. There are several startup weekend events, and then there's things like there's the Kaufman Fast Track program or the Co-Starters program, which are, each of those is a 9-week program, and one night a week you kind of take an idea and sort of go through and try to sort of figure out if you can do this. And one of the first things they do is a real gut check about, are you ready to be an entrepreneur? Do you have what it takes? And that's not pejorative in any way, but it's just if you're very risk averse, then you'll have a tough time with this business. And so it's just being honest with yourself and seeing if you have the skills it takes. And even if you don't have what it takes to jump out and actually create something, you may work for a startup. So there's a little bit less risk than you doing it yourself, but you're not the one who has the burden of paying everyone and the bills and making sure the company works.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea of sort of learning more about it before you just sort of quit your job to go start a business for the first time with no sort of knowledge and understanding your own how risk averse you are. I think that's really helpful too, because
it's huge.
It's a big deal. And I think you're right when you talk about mentoring and how important that is. I think of it a lot of times in the context of like people who are dentists. You go to dental school to learn how to fix teeth. And then all of a sudden you become a dentist, and many dentists have their own practice. And suddenly you have to learn how to manage employees, pay the bills, market yourself. You didn't learn to do all those things in dental school.
It drives most of them crazy.
Right. I think there's a lot of businesses like that. You start the business because you're an expert in something, but the thing that you're an expert in isn't necessarily running a business. Right. And so that's really tricky.
No, you're absolutely right. I see that with food people a lot. It's, I'm a good cook and I want to cater. But then when you have to start figuring out how to, be profitable and, how much each serving costs and all the rest of those things, it's stuff that you never thought about at the beginning, but that's life or death is,
And it's hard because I think a lot of times you feel kind of isolated. Your immediate friends and family may have no idea about the industry that you're in. Yeah. So reaching outside of your own circle to find mentors, it's critical that you find people that know about other things that can talk to you. So if someone who's listening is interested to be a mentor at like an accelerator program like yours, how do they volunteer to be a mentor? I've been asked that a few times.
Right. Yeah, we're always looking for good mentors. So, for us, it would just be to contact us. And, for 0 to 510, for example, we're at 0 to 510-510.com, or we have an info address, info at 0 to 510, and that way you can contact us. I know also that so StartCo has a number of programs and mentors that, and they're at neverstop.co, so all of us, we'd love to have, if you've got skills, if you've got experience to share, that'd be awesome to just contact us, and we'll put you in the right direction.
Well, the other thing I think it's good for is I sometimes work with people, say they have a background in sales, but they're really interested to get into the medical industry, but they've never worked in the medical industry. So something like becoming a mentor for a medical device startup might be a great way to bring your sales knowledge with you, help to mentor those people, and at the same time, you get something out of it because you're learning about the medical industry and you have something to put on your resume now.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the good thing is that you get to join a fraternity of people who are very skilled already in that area. So in terms of you being able to make connections that you may need to break into that business, then it's a really smart move.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you also mentioned the idea of working for a startup rather than starting a startup. Mm-hmm. And occasionally I will work with clients or talk to people who are interested in doing just that. But they often don't really know where to start or where to look or where to find those jobs because they may not be posted to some place like Indeed.com.
Right.
How could they go about finding something like that?
So 3 things. Network. No, I mean, really, that's, and you actually, you're one of the people who's really kind of, helped me think through that a lot, which is, just, it really is all about building your network. So where do you go? There's several startup events, and we have things going on every month in Memphis. So, showing up at some of these things, we talked earlier in the podcast about our demo day on the 13th. Mm-hmm. The whole entrepreneur community is going to be out then. And so there'll be opportunities there. As I look around, like there's some recruiters who actually specialize in startups, and so that would be another way to go.
Know that. Okay.
Yeah. There's and then there's also I found this site the other day. It's called StartupHire.com, and so they're focusing on this whole merging of innovative businesses with entrepreneur-minded people, and so they're becoming several more types of opportunities, but really, LinkedIn is great in terms of being able to, as you find groups, there's a group on just about anything in the world out there. So kind of, becoming a part of one of those startup focused groups, and there are even some that are startups, and so there's a medical device startups group, and so even it gets even more specific. So there's several ways to do it, but really it's all about trying to brush up that resume, put like a good public face on, and get out there and network.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. And the thing that's really interesting in fields that are related to technology is that there are many meetup groups that exist that you can just show up to.
Yes.
I use meetup.com quite a bit.
Yep.
I've gone to meetup groups as far away as Australia when I've been traveling.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't know if I told you.
Doesn't surprise me, though.
But I mean, I went in a number of cities, but I went in both Melbourne and in Sydney to technology-related startup groups, and I now have people who I met who I still stay in touch with. And it's been incredible when I've had clients who have an interest in going to Australia. I actually have someone I can introduce them to. So I think those, especially when you're in a field related to technology, there's so many options to meet new people.
You're right on. Meetup I've actually used myself as well, so I can definitely vouch for its usefulness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So one other question. So the mentors that your businesses have, do they ever seek out mentors that are not part of your program? Like, do they ever go and find people who they're interested in having as a mentor? Do you see that at all?
They do, and actually, that's actually one of the marks of the good entrepreneurs is that they go and they're not bound by the box that you put them in, which is great. As a matter of fact, we've now got more mentors in our program just because people have done that and they've had success with them, and then me not wanting to lose any good talent, I'll go and I'll follow up with them and I'll bring them to join the fold of our mentors. And so we highly encourage that. We don't claim to have all the expertise in the world, and we'll try and link them up with people, but often as they go searching, they'll get a recommendation from somebody else, and they'll go and find another mentor, which is great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So a question that I often get from clients especially is, how do I ask someone to be a mentor to me? Do you have any idea how your your companies, how are they asking these mentors to be a mentor? How does that happen?
Well, they have a little bit of an unfair advantage because, we train mentors and we bring them in and we basically serve them up on a silver platter. so it's a little bit cheating, but the basic thing really is in everything, you've got a need for something, and you start by asking for a little help with something, or asking for an opinion, or I'm trying to do this, what do you think, or what problems might I run into here, and get the conversation started, and then sort of gauging from the way the person reacts to you. Mentors, or good mentors, are always going to be the ones who are willing to take some time and give you a thoughtful response, and if you get that, then that's usually an open door to say, would you like to take this relationship a little bit further? Would you be a mentor to me? It's really as simple as that. But usually, if you're not in a situation where you're given a mentor, much like we do, then start with something small, gauge their response, and then from there, if that looks like thumbs up, then by all means ask. And you never get anything unless you ask. So don't be afraid to ask.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing I always tell people is they're often nervous to ask for a mentor or to network with someone that they don't know. And they say, gosh, well, won't that person be offended? Say the person's like a vice president of something, and they say, gosh, they're a vice president. I'm really nervous to approach them. Won't they be offended? And my response is, they got to be a vice president by networking. They didn't become a vice president because they were just super smart. At some point, part of your growth in your career is really tied to your network and your ability to know people and know what's going on. And so it's not the first time this other person, the vice president, has ever networked. It may be the first time you have, but you're the one who's uncomfortable. It's probably not them.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is really spot on advice. If I think of the last few jobs I've had, really it's, somebody who knows somebody, and you make the introductions, and through your network you find something, and I think that's becoming more and more the norm. A lot of hiring managers will tell you frankly that, if they have a pile of 500 resumes, they don't even look at them. It's really it's the sort of, the first question is, who did this come through? And that's how things happen in the world. And I think the faster that we accept that and work within that, the more successful we'll be.
I totally agree. Well, we've covered so many different things. I really appreciate all this great advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with today?
Well, let's see. So, one of the things that I've noticed about folks who become entrepreneurs and who actually succeed at being entrepreneurs is that they, in fact, I'll give you more than one thing. So firstly, they listen, and that's hugely important. I think you come in and typically you're full of ideas, and your first instinct is to talk, and that's sort of natural. But you'll find that you learn so much more and you accomplish so much more if you take some time to listen. The good ones, they also they seek help. We talked about mentorship. If you don't have one, get one. Get two, get three.
Right.
But then, the sort of a byproduct of that is that you'll have a lot of different kinds of advice. And every now and then, the bits of advice will conflict, and you just have to know how to process that. I think the best ones do that really well, and it's a skill that you have to learn, because as a young entrepreneur, you think about, oh, he said this and she said that, and and then you sort of start biting your nails because you're confused. Well, being able to process that and figure out what's best for your situation is a huge skill that you have to learn. But more than anything else, entrepreneurs and the successful ones, they act. They do not sit around and get confused. There's a certain amount of data you need to get. You've got a limited amount of money. You can't afford to do this twice, but you can do it in small increments. So, pick off bite-sized pieces, try something. If it's not working, iterate. You still have money left. And so, but act. Don't waste time, because time is money, and that's one of your most precious resources.
Yes, absolutely. One thing I heard a really wise person say recently was that the one thing we all have is 24 hours in a day.
Yep.
You know, you got to use it carefully.
Exactly.
So, Allan, one last question, and that is, how can listeners learn more about 0 to 510? Where should they go?
Sure. So we have a website, 02510.com, so 0 to 510.com, and that'll tell you the whole story. Or drop me a line, Allan, Allan, at 0 to 510.com.
Great. And if somebody's interested to apply, when is the deadline every year? Like, is it, what time of year is it?
So usually we start taking applications in January, and then we go through till early March, so like the first week in March. So you have a couple months to apply, and then after that we will usually have decisions by mid-April, and the program starts in mid-May.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Allan. This has been excellent.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Always nice to talk to you.
Well, the discussion's been great. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Tune in next week for another edition of the Copeland Coaching Podcast. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher to be sure you never miss an episode.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.